Let's talk about the story that really, is causing this controversy. We're not saying.
I mean,
we're not
everybody's
saying
talking. This is one of the few stories I've seen lately, which this is really tragic, and it happens from time to time. But this is the first time I've seen it where parents just actually smoke joints with the kid.
Right.
And one of my points was that's huge. That's the thing that they don't want anybody to know about.
Right.
The anecdotal evidence that they don't want anybody to see, especially the fact that when the kid went back to the hospital, immediately seizures and the worst ones.
Yeah, that's all right. So let's look at this story. This is from WMAZ 13 out of Georgia. Oops, wait, let me take it off mute. This is a local station.
A Twiggs County couple has stepped into the national spotlight after deputies arrested them for giving their teenage son marijuana to smoke. The couple said they did it because the marijuana stopped their son's seizures.
Zach Merchant broke the story last week and has tracked it ever since. He joins us live in studio to explain the nationwide attention the story is getting.
Past 6 days, this story has been picked up by media outlets all across the country. That's brought a whole lot of attention down on the couple and law enforcement involved in their arrest. Not all of it has been positive. Last week, we introduced you to Matthew and Susanna Brill, a couple that openly admits they gave their teenage son marijuana to smoke.
I smoke it first. I know where it comes from. I know my people. Made sure the bag was good. Packed the bowl in my bowl, which I ain't been anywhere else. And I set it on the table and told him that it was his decision.
According to Twiggs County Sheriff Darren Mitchum, what they did was against the law, and the couple was arrested for reckless conduct. But they say they were doing it to keep their son safe. They claim marijuana stops his seizures, and it's that aspect of the case that has, at least in part, helped catapult the Brills into the middle of the national conversation on marijuana legalization and given them plenty of supporters around the country.
The bottom fell out of it at 2 days after all this.
Their story has been told in national media all over the country, and in less than a week, they've raised over $20,000 on a GoFundMe page.
But I can say that it's been the biggest impact in my life, period.
But not all the support has been positive. A Twiggs County Sheriff's Office spokesman says their office has been swamped with calls, and some of them have been threats, like this one from an unidentified caller.
Yeah, you try to take away my kids and see what happens. I'll shoot you all.
Sheriff Darren Mitchum says the angry calls have been mostly from marijuana supporters who believe the Brills shouldn't have been arrested at all, but he's standing by the charge.
Or just freedom
Had I been
lovers.
There, and I'd have been the one with the defects worker, I'd have made the same decision.
Yeah,
the deputy has a job to do. I think the charge was appropriate. There could have been more that he could have charged him with.
Yeah.
Steve Sadow, a lawyer representing the Brills, says he condemns any threat to law enforcement, but he's also asking for the criminal charges against the couple to be dropped. Lori, back to you.
Last week.
Yeah, we could, if they were black, we could have thrown a bunch of more charges at them.
Unbelievable.
But,
I
mean, that's ridiculous.
That was the one talking point. I couldn't remember exactly what I came back with when the cop says, when the sheriff said he defended his deputy because, what else was his deputy supposed to do? Basically, he was saying that his deputy was witnessing someone break a law and that they have to enforce all the laws. But that's not true. I can throw you a book full of laws that they no longer enforce.
That's right.
I used to have a meme generating, I don't know what you'd call it, like a thing on Facebook called Simple. It's just basically stop enforcing marijuana prohibition laws. And it's the right thing to do. And I've read from LEAP, representatives from LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, where they have said that you don't have to enforce a law like the marijuana laws. You do not have, there's nothing that tells you have to do that. But what I did say, and I remember from the clip, is that the reason that cops will always say that is no matter how high up on the food chain they are. Like that was a sheriff that said he was defending his deputy. No matter how low on the food chain you are or high on the food chain you are, there's always somebody that's higher if you're a cop. And if you're the top cop, then you're the donor is your boss, apparently. And, it's ridiculous that they can't stand up for themselves to not enforce a law that's unjustifiable. And, it just harkens back to, during the concentration camps when the SS soldiers would say, well, I'm just doing my job as they load somebody into a gas chamber. I mean, it's the same mentality that we're looking at right here.
Well, yeah, because
And
they
I mean,
actually want to enforce that law because they're a-holes.
yeah, that's a big part of it.
And you know, what's one of the big points in the story is that it's 6 months to get permission to use the CBD oil that is legal in Georgia for this condition. I think that's the point, is that it's going to take 6 months, and they have found a way, which they were probably like, hey, look, they use this in Israel. They vape cannabis in Israel. This, you know, it's they are probably, well, whatever, but it's like, hey, look, people smoke and stuff, and symptoms go away. They use it, or this is the only way we can get it. It's from my guy that I know is I've been smoking. You know, that's part of it too, right? I mean, he's like basically saying I'm in the black market.
They did try hemp-derived, legally purchasable CBD products that you don't have to go through Georgia's really restrictive medical marijuana program, which from what I understood was that they were on some kind of a 6-year waiting list or something like that. I'm not sure what that was, but I know that they had already went through the exhaustive process of being ready to apply for a medical marijuana card,
right?
Which is you have to demonstrate that you've used all the other known, treatments for your ailment. And you know, if you read the Georgia medical marijuana law, it'll automatically make you mad. But you got to realize that after you read it, that there's none of that stuff that they say that people can use available in Georgia.
Right.
There's no provision for production, and there's no allowance for importation. So anybody that has that kind of CBD oil is already breaking the law. But another thing that you might want to remember about the case is that these people specifically said that the CBD did not work. The CBD only did not work. And the other thing that I think is so marvelous is that all they were doing was smoking joints with this kid.
Right.
And he was 71 days seizure free. Who knows what the joints were? Because their marijuana is all unregulated in Georgia. So when you're in Georgia and you're like the guy said, I know what my guy has. He's not going to screw me over. He might have been getting something that was like some kind of CBD related stuff. I'm not sure about that.
Right.
But to me, I feel like he was basically specifically just talking about getting what is considered medical marijuana in a black market situation like what Georgia's under. That generally means just some really good bud. And
right.
You're
right.
lucky if the name that they say it is like, hey, here's some OG Kush. You're lucky if it's anything related to that. You know, like I'm not 100% sure how black markets work in places like Georgia these days, because I haven't been around in a while. But if you know what I mean. But I'm just saying generally that's kind of what I'm getting a picture of in my mind.
There's a lot of California weed going to Atlanta. You know, I mean, and there's plenty of people growing it there. A lot of people, a lot of people transplant from Georgia to Colorado, and because they grow really good weed. Atlanta is a huge consumer of cannabis. So yeah, I'm sure he was getting good stuff. And you know, it's all about if they're trying to protect the kid. Here we have, like you say, they've exhausted a whole bunch of stuff. They're going through the process. They're trying to get legal use with the medical stuff. They're trying to get stuff online, which, the legal stuff, which is sketchy. You know, if you don't know your sources, like we're talking about in the chat with Holy Cannabis Oil, you don't know where to get your good CBD oil necessarily, because there's a lot of crap out there too. But just trying to make a dime, and that's bullshit. But so here we have a parents that are doing their due diligence to do the best for their kid. They find something that's like, well, gee, what if it's as easy as like Jimmy Dore said today on his show? All these guys are throwing poison down my throat to try to get me to not be nauseous. And Steph says, why don't you smoke a joint? And one joint, and he's done. He can eat, he can drink. Everything's fine. So this kid's puffing, 1 or 2 joints, maybe smoking a joint with his dad, probably, which is a fucking rite of passage.
Right.
especially for stoners.
As a parent, that's what you would want to see.
Yeah,
you don't
absolutely.
Tell your kids how bad weed is, and then of course they're going to be smoking it behind your back. I mean,
now granted, there's another couple this week that got busted because there's cocaine in the kids' system. So hopefully that don't escalate to that level.
To be honest, when you look into it, this happens a lot. Like parents are getting busted for medicating their kid or dosing their kid with something to help the kid fall asleep. And this claim that the sheriff said, oh, this is tantamount to when kids do that kind of thing, like give a kid a methamphetamine so he can go to school because he hasn't slept, or give him some Benadryl or something really strong to make him sleep, or opioids. I get that people do that, and that's very dangerous. But when you get that other case where that woman was charged for her kid accidentally ate a medicated brownie, I believe it was, and I think this was out west, I believe, right, Nevada or somewhere.
Yeah, is that the one where you mean where they injected the chocolate this week?
Yeah, and the cop said in that case the cop was like, yeah, this is this was a overdose that was a life-threatening overdose. And it's like, you couldn't be any farther from the truth. It's like, sure, you know, when you're saying that you're making strict laws about child endangerment and all this stuff because of the fact that the parent was giving a kid like a Xanax or something that legitimately is dangerous to give to children and infants and not even legal. And even if you get a prescription, you can't even get one for a toddler, I don't think. In a lot of these cases, you can't. And it's like, I understand that, and I have a little bit of sympathy towards law enforcement and the, you know, parents and stuff to be afraid for stuff like that. But when it comes to cannabis, this is a totally different ball game, man. And there's no science to say how dangerous it actually is. And this overdose that we keep hearing, the reefer madness people talk about, the hospital visit increases for these overdoses. I don't even like the characterization of overdose because of the bad connotations that come with that. I'll grant you that it is an overdose. They took too much of THC or whatever, and there is some effects that you have to deal with when you do that. But to say that it's life-threatening, or to put somebody in a situation like a parent where they're going to lose their kids and they're going to go to prison or jail over it, or have to pay some crazy fines, it's not right, man. And it's another thing that not enough people, it's like the stigma is so hard on just little things that when you talk about stuff like this, you get people that are really, you know, thinking that marijuana is a really bad thing, I guess. I don't know. The education.
Well, here's the thing, Brand, you can't say it's a life-threatening situation when cannabis has never killed anybody. So it's, you know, it's ridiculous. If are they having a reaction? Should they start it with a smaller dose? Yeah, probably. But yeah, you can get through that, and they all do. They all do.
And there's no some of them even I've never seen permanent damage. Like some of these overdoses from opioids or other drugs cause you lose your breathing stops, which can cause brain damage.
Right.
And that's a real situation. Or when kids accidentally stumble upon their parents' guns that they leave out, and that's 1,300 kids a year are dying from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what if they don't die? Then there's permanent injury. We're talking a lot of problems there too. I mean, and I'm not saying that parents should be arrested for these negligible things that they do and taking their kids taken away and all that. I'm not trying to throw anybody else under the bus here, but it seems to me like the focus has been on weed, and the public hysteria about parents doing negligible shit always falls on the weed people. And then
it's always about the children. It's always about the children. Laura Ingraham, you know, we can't do this to our kids. You know, the cop. Oh God. You know, we can't do this to our kids.
She's just horrible. But another thing about that story is I did notice a tweet from Tom Angel about it where he called the sheriff a motherfucker.
Yeah, I saw that.
And my comment on that is that we try to be cordial and watch our language as much as we can when we do these reporting on weed stories, clips and shows and stuff. But the thing about it is, man, and we know that we have elderly people in the audience and kids in the audience, and they're just trying to get valuable information that's going to help them in their own situation and stuff. And I understand all that. But, man, it is very hard to walk through these stories and read this tragic shit happening to people over fucking marijuana, man.